Good morning. Good morning. A vibrant, lively group this morning. I love that. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. We are a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes, your identities are welcome here. Special welcome to visitors and newcomers. We're glad you're here. There's a preschool playroom open for young ones throughout the morning just past the lobby. And there's groups for kids following the time for all ages. All are welcome. And after service, you can join us down in the Commons for refreshments and fellowship, where you can find ways to get connected in the life of the church and the community. You can also find information about upcoming events and a calendar on the back of your order of service as well. You can always contact the office if you're looking for ways to get connected. Special welcome to Emily Wickham for joining us for music today and joining Rose. So glad you're here. Welcome. Our justice partner for the month is Jeremiah Program, Disrupting Generational Poverty Through Supportive Programming and Housing. You can give us a Plates Pass or anytime online. And join us next week for our last summer schedule service at 10 a.m. with guest preacher, the Reverend Laura Smidzik. Laura is a dear friend and colleague of mine and recently served in the Fridley area. Before that, working for Rainbow Families and other LGBTQIA+ organizations throughout the state. It'll be a lovely service as we transition from summer into fall, so join us next week at 10 a.m. And then, the following week, September 8th, we return to 2 services at 9 a.m. or 11. So if you come at 10, you'll be late for one, but early for the other. And that on September 8th is our annual water communion service. Each person is invited to bring a bit of water from home or some special place to share in our common bowl ritual. So that's Sunday, September 8th. And then that following Wednesday, we return to Wednesday night programming, a weekly dinner with various groups. This year, dinner followed by various drop-in options and larger forums later on after that. And sign-ups for groups and volunteering and all of the things for fall for kids and adults will be in the e-news and then on Sundays down in the Commons throughout September. You can reach out to the office to find out more or ask questions about how to get connected. Special announcement or reminder, you can visit the social justice table or the table in the lobby today for a couple of things. There's an Isaiah training on Saturday, September 7th in the morning about justice and democracy. All are welcome. You can find out more at the table about that. And then you can also turn in your postcards for our support of democracy through postcard ministry and advocacy. So there's more information at the table in the lobby for that as well. So I invite you as we gather into this time together to take a breath of gratitude for the day, breath of gratitude for being together. Let us enter our time of worship with these words from our minister in the 1870s, the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes. May our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together. In just a moment, our opening hymn will call us back. Its lyrics will be on the screen or in the gray hymnal. But before that, I invite you to rise in body or spirit, greet those around you, and greet those online as well.
a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow in the wind, let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old will die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by, and let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear your pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Thank you.
Today's chalice lighting is The Larger Circle by Wendell Berry. We clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance. And the larger circle of all creatures, passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance, to a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it, except in fragments.
I'd like to invite the children forward. And I want to talk about butterflies today. What do we know about butterflies? What do we know about butterflies?
Nothing.
Metamorphosis, caterpillars, what? They can fly. They go through change. They can fly over 600 miles. Did you know that there was a time when we didn't know that butterflies could fly so far? I know, right? There was a time we didn't know. And so this story today talks about how we learned about that. And it's called Winged Wonders: Solving the Monarch Migration Mystery. And I know that most of you don't look at monarch migration as a mystery. But for centuries, up and down North America, every year brought a mystery. These monarch butterflies would come and swoop in like clockwork at the same time every year, and then just disappear, just as they came. But the question was, where did they go? People pondered from southern Carolina or southern Canada through the middle of the United States and all the way to Mexico. There were things happening that we couldn't figure out. And then in 1976, you all remember 1976, right?
Yes.
I remember 1976. The world finally learned the answer, and it was a groundbreaking discovery. A one-of-a-kind insect journey, a remote roosting place, a small speck on the map where millions of monarchs are drawn like magnets every winter. The Great Monarch Migration, the news story called it. But the question is, who solved this mystery? Kids? I mean, I would not be surprised in the least. Who tracked these winged wonders from one end of the continent to the other? And who found their secret roosting place, this marvel of nature? Well, it wasn't a kid, but this guy's name was Fred. I kid you not. The Canadian scientist who spent 30 years of his life studying the monarch mystery from his university. He drove through the United States with Nora, his research partner and wife. Like detectives, they tried to track the cagey critters' migration from Canada all the way southward. They figured out how to tag the monarch's fragile wings, first with paint, just a little piece of paint that would fade, and then with labels that plopped to the ground when they were wet, and finally with price tags that stuck. Price tags, can you imagine? This was 1976, way last century. Yeah. Was it Nora, master organizer of the monarch material they collected, who placed the news ads in newspapers near and far, seeking ordinary people to help by tagging monarch wings in their hometowns? Nora, who wrote newsletters and kept in touch with all the volunteers, who logged and mapped every tidbit of information they sent to the lab. Tidbit, that's a good word, isn't it? Was it those dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of science teachers, backyard gardeners, and curious souls who answered Nora's ads and became citizen scientists, who gently caught, tagged, and released the delicate dancing insects? Did they help solve the monarch mystery? Yes. Was it Ken, the American adventurer, who spotted Nora's ad in Mexico City's newspaper while visiting there, who called her in Canada and agreed to follow the monarchs through Mexico where he didn't speak the language, who bumped along winding roads with his newlywed wife, Catalina, for nearly 2 years trying to track the butterfly's twisted trail? Was it the villagers and farmers of central Mexico who discovered the couple look higher and higher up into the thin air of volcanic mountains and their dynamic oyamel tree groves? For who generations welcomed the monarch's soaring spirits during the autumn Dia los Muertos celebrations? Who held the whispered whereabouts of their winter roosting places? Was it them?
Yeah.
Was it Catalina, born and raised in Mexico, who introduced Ken to her beloved monarchs? Who spoke with the locals in her Spanish dialect to guide their search? Who kept 40 notebooks of meticulous monarch data? Who first crunched through early morning snow high in the Sierra Madre Mountains into an Uyama Grove and exclaimed, I see them up here. Or was it Jim, the American science teacher, who with his students attached teeny tiny tags to tiny wings, who caught and tagged the very monarch in a Minnesota goldenrod field that Fred later found among millions in a Mexican tree grove? Who gave Fred the proof he needed that one teeny tiny tag, that one butterfly flew from Minnesota to Mexico and announced the discovery of the great monarch migration? What is the answer?
Yes, everyone.
Yes, the answer is yes. All of them, the scientists, the citizen scientists, the regular folks along the way, played a part in this discovery. Each person, in small ways or large, helped answer that centuries-old question. Where do they go? And now we know. Each year, millions of monarchs fly the same path, generation after generation, from southern Canada through the United States to roost for the winter in Mexico's mountains. Then they journey north again, feasting on milkweed plants all the way. However, today, there's a new burning question for monarchs. How will they survive? Monarch numbers have plummeted since the 1976 discovery, from at least 1 billion down to millions, a handful now to each 100 then. Chemical sprays destroy their milkweed plants. Logging and farming threaten their oyama groves. Pollution disrupts the air and weather for their flights. So what can we do? Who can make a difference for the monarchs today? Who can preserve their landing spots and airstreams? Who can keep them alive? Who can do it? The answer is actually no mystery at all. The answer is everyone. Yes and yes and yes. But can anybody do it by themselves?
No.
Can anybody do all of it at once?
No.
What can everybody do?
Help. Play a little part.
Pay a little part to make it work. So we are going to now head downstairs and have activities and fun stuff. We will sing the children's benediction. It is in the back inside cover of your hymnal, and it will also be on the screen.
I invite you to take a deep breath. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning. Above you the sky, and beyond that the stars shining with their ancient light, holding you in this moment, this breath. You yourself made of earth and stars. Know that in this house you are named and known as beloved, as sacred. Invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God and Gaia of many names and beyond all naming. So often we find ourselves in seasons of liminality, of in-between, where we were and where we are yet to be, in some ways feeling suspended, sometimes stretched between what has been and what's yet to come. Like late summer, readying for a settling in time, to prepare for the fall and all that it will have us hold, either in small backpacks for another school year or impossible expectations in work or family that we're not quite sure how it will all turn out. We enter these reconnecting at times where we know always that joy and woe come to us unexpected. And it is the kindness of dear loved ones and sometimes of strangers that remind us that it is beauty and art and love that hold us in their keeping between the now and the not yet. May we be part of the care that holds a space between for each other, the tenderness, the uncertainty, and the possibility to find our way always toward love. Hold in our heart this day all those who suffer in mind, body, or spirit. Invite you to bring the names you're holding in your own heart this day in joy or in sorrow, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all the names known and unknown, may we all be held in love. These words of meditation are from Naomi Shihab-Nye. Poet writes, "A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him, no car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say fragile or handle with care, but his ears fill up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. May we care for each other with such tenderness in our fragility and in our love. Amen." The hymn is "Where Do We Come From?" I invite you to remain seated as we sing.
We're going to sing this all together first, and then we'll try doing a round, because I like rounds. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Let's do that again. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Here's the next part. Where do we come from? Big breath of air. Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. One more time. Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. And then there's a little counter melody, fourth part. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? All right, think we can do all that? So there'll be a repeat on each of those lines, and I'm gonna kind of move in front of each section to do this, to start the round. We're gonna start over here. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Thank you.
Today's reading is an excerpt from Dwellings by Linda Hogan. Sometimes I hear it talking. The light of the sunflower was one language, but there are others more audible. Once in the redwood forest, I heard a beat, something like a drum or a heart coming from the ground and trees and wind. That underground current stirred a kind of knowing inside me, a kinship and longing, a dream barely remembered that disappeared back into the body. Another time, there was a booming voice of an ocean storm thundering far out at sea, telling about what lived in the distance, about rough water that would arrive, wave after wave, revealing disturbances at the center. Tonight I walk. I am watching the sky. I think of the people who came before me and how they knew the placement of stars in the sky. Watch the moving sun long and hard enough to witness how a certain angle of light touched a stone only once a year. Without written records, they knew the gods of every night, the small, fine details of the world around them, and of the immensity above them. Walking, I can almost hear the redwoods beating, and the oceans are above me here, rolling clouds, heavy and dark, considering snow. On the dry red road, I passed the place of the sunflower, that dark and secret location where creation took place. I wonder if it'll return this summer, if it will multiply and move up to the other stand of flowers in a territorial struggle. It is a world of elemental attention, of all things working together, listening to what speaks to the blood. Whichever road I follow, I walk in the land of many gods, and they love and eat one another. Walking, I am listening in a deeper way. Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say, watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands.
Thank you, Emily and Rose. So I am not, which may not be a surprise to many, not a particularly avid sports fan. I'm usually a bit unaware of some of the popular games going on, in the team news going on, though I grew up in a household where we were well aware of all the sports that were going on. I will, though, say that even though these past several days, I've been a little more inspired to more proudly sport my tennis sweatshirt from my alma mater, Mankato West High School. Just a proud scarlet, no particular reason. But there is something about the Olympics that still catches my attention every 4 years in the summer or 4 years in the winter. Not all the events do I watch or track super specifically, but I do find I love following our favorite team wherever they go, the Minnesota Lynx. with Nafisa Collier playing for the U.S. women's basketball team, bringing home gold again, or celebrating Suni Lee in gymnastics from East St. Paul, where we lived for several years and both our children were born. One image during the Olympics that did catch my eye, and to be clear, it's just really good marketing, which I'm mostly skeptical of, but sometimes it does hit you in a certain way. One of the mid-game messages showed an Olympic rower in a boat going along the river, and then the picture slowly panned to the side, and lined up behind her was an ever-expanding boat where coaches and loved ones and mentors and families and friends and fans and on just kept going and expanding and expanding. There were similar videos of runners and other Olympians starting with the individual and then panning to the side to show the many behind them before back to the solo competitor. The simplicity of that image stuck with me. And this sort of obvious idea that in this case each athlete, and more generally each person, comes from a long line of support. We never go it alone. We never arrive on our own. We are always backed up by mentors or coaches or teachers or friends or allies of so many kinds who have been part of who we are, what skills we have, what paths we've taken. And to broaden the sentiment even more, it is about moving beyond the idolatry of the self alone, which so much of our very tradition was built on. Emerson's self-reliance, which may have had some important themes in a time where individuality was being suppressed, but as often happens, the pendulum swung too far, way toward individualism, the lie of self-sufficiency and self-madeness, as if context or community wasn't critical to everything, as if we weren't deeply interdependent. So we need these constant reminders, sometimes very simple, good marketing reminders, that we come from a long line of so many, those we know, those we might not even realize, who have cut some path for us, got us to where we are, good or bad, who are part of the larger story of our own story, held in all its beautiful and broken truth. Tonight, writes Indigenous poet Linda Hogan, I'm watching the sky. I think of the people who came before me, she writes, and how they knew the placement of stars in the sky without written records. They knew the gods of every night, the small, fine details of the world around them and the immensity above them. She says, suddenly all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say, watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands. If you hold in your mind and heart little else from today or from spirituality in general, this is a good synopsis of what religion at its best is about. Be still, pay attention. You are the result of the love of thousands. Have you ever been in a conversation that kind of rambles around and swirls a bit, says the preacher who's always in those types of conversations. And at some point, someone asks, how did we get talking about this? It's actually a favorite little memory test for me to trace back the thread of conversation. How did we end up here? How did we get here? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Life is a riddle and a mystery, and so are those conversations sometimes. Sometimes it's hard to trace back all those story threads from the conversation or that make us who we are as people. Those threads of places or moments, those things of impact, some good, some certainly not, some a challenge, some not obvious in the moment, some seemingly big, but don't take the shape we expect. And on, those threads weave back and get super tangled sometimes, and I believe at some level, all of those threads, the ones we're regularly aware of, like a favorite family story or a recipe, or some tangible reminder in our home, or the ones we rarely think of, the quiet influence of some person or some conversation or some moment of beauty that shapes how we respond to or act in the world. I believe all of those threads live within us, even and perhaps especially when we're not even aware of them. I'm reminded of a story that I shared a while back during YouTube pandemic church time when I was here alone talking to a little camera. It's very sad. But I'm glad you're here now, so I don't expect you all heard that story or retained it, so I'm going to tell it again. It's from author Amy Nezhukema Tatil in her book World of Wonders. If you haven't come across that book, it's beautiful. But she writes this: there's a spot over Lake Superior where migrating butterflies veer sharply. No one understands why they make such a quick turn at the specific place until a geologist finally made the connection. A mountain rose out of the water in that exact location thousands of years ago. She writes, these butterflies can still remember some mass that they've never seen. How did they pass on this knowledge? Does it transmit through the song they sing to themselves, spinning inside a chrysalis? Does milkweed whisper instructions to them, she says? Perhaps in the distant future, she writes, a sound that resembles my voice will still haunt my great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren, a sound they can't quite place or can't quite name. Life is a riddle and a mystery. I love that sentiment of these things living within kind of our reactions to the world that we can't quite name. What is living within you? What threads and strands do you hold on regularly to that you know, familiar ones you know well, or impactful moments or people that are right with you in that boat rowing along, where you can recognize their voice or hear their impact still? But then who and what is further back, distanced somehow, that you can still feel at some level moving you along, their strength or presence moving you forward? This is so central to everything we try to do here, to go deep into spiritual paths and stories, personal and collective, to explore and uncover and sometimes be challenged by or wrestle with the threads of our histories and stories, our own religious past, or our spiritual growth. It's also central in our work for a more just and loving world to know that trying to be part of movements for liberation is always rooted in massive, maddening uncertainty of those intangible things like peace and love and hope and those fluffy, soulful things we always talk about at church that at some level feel so hard to explain or define and even how to be guided by them. And yet they are the things that often give depth and meaning as to why we delight in the world at all and work so hard for it. It's why we keep on keeping on. And I believe it's because at some level we feel the persistence of those way back in that boat saying, hey, been rowing back here for a long time for you. Keep it up. Add your strength to it because it's the only way it keeps going. I don't know about you, but it seems like every election season brings a little anxiety. Do you feel that? Local, national, all of it. For some of us in very unique and personal ways, other and just in the general ether of the air. This fall, we're planning some election survival kits for you, some chalices and meditation manuals, things to help remind you to care for your soul, especially now. The very basic idea here is that spirituality always tries to teach us this: your soul needs care just as much as your body does. Daily and weekly routines of care. Sometimes we frame it in this simple way. So if you need to remember what spiritual practice is for and how to do it, here's a super simple way. Daily, weekly, yearly, lifetime. Each day, daily, engage in some spiritual practice. Meditation, journaling, whatever, many paths, right? Each week, be in spiritual or nourishing community of some kind. Check, you're here. Good job. And then when we get further out, yearly, some sort of retreat from daily routines, and then rare, perhaps lifetime or just very rare, opportunities for some sort of pilgrimage to some sacred place for you. Daily spiritual practice, weekly community. But in these days, the most important, how you balance your soul, your spirit, is moment to moment, day to day, to attend to your life and your values with intention. Part of the election anxiety or dis-ease, I believe, is that we're always trying to move toward liberation, toward the ideal, which is never fully realized. And we know that we're always in progress, on the way, never finished. Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams says, our anxiety comes from the desire to have things be different. There's going to be the day after the election, they write, and the day after that. And we need to be present to what is, regardless of the outcome. She says, my ancestors had to prepare themselves over and over again for moving toward a freedom that was nowhere in sight. She says, we prepare for life as it unfolds, not our ideal image of it. That is the only path forward. Moving toward a freedom that was nowhere in sight. That's hard work. And I believe it is the only work. Constantly adjusting our path, paying attention to the path, celebrating good work done, but knowing it's never finished, and knowing perfection is not really a quantifiable goal. It is the moving toward it that the ancestors and these children ask of us. I've shared a few times this phrase I go back to, and I return to such things because I think it's good to know some phrases by heart when you need to call them up in some distressing or hard moments. So this is the phrase, we must take shifts for the revolution. This phrase that we must take shifts, as I learned from a mentor and an activist friend, and I believe it means a few things. One, that we must find balance for our own soul of activism and rest, learning and advocacy, of all the things to learn, reflect, grow, recreate, recreate, pause, play, celebrate, experience joy, feel others' pain, and the cycle of all the things. And I also believe it to mean we need 1,000 different skills and gifts to add to the work of liberation. Reverend Dr. King was famous for saying this. He said, it might be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law can't make a man love me, but it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important also. Amen, Dr. King. That's why so many movements for justice needed every entry point into the work. Every legal wonk who loves policies and legislation, like the work of Thurgood Marshall or Constance Baker Motley, writing the original legal work for Brown versus the Board of Education. Each movement needs every marketing person we know that will catch the glimpse in the soul of the minister watching the Olympics or whatever, somebody that knows how to get a good message across. Every activist willing to go face to face with militarized police to shut some stuff down. Every sign maker or every song leader, every postcard sender or door knocker, every small oar in the water stretching all the way down the line behind you that is in the boat to move it forward. Sometimes something just strikes at your soul and we veer or we move together, not always knowing fully why. Maybe we're avoiding some ancient obstacle from generations to go, or we're simply putting our trust in each other that it's time to move. Never perfect, never finished. And whether we know it or not, maybe we trust there are ancestors and stories not just all the way back behind us, but right alongside of us, singing us forward toward a liberation, a freedom yet to be known. The hymn is I Know I Can. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing.
All right, let's just jump right in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. My sorrow heals my soul, and burdens make me strong. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. My sister in my heart, my brother in my song, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, the destination is near. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on.
I invite you, as you're comfortable, to place a hand on your heart or toward the sky or the earth in gratitude. And breathe deep the breath of life, and to know that you are not alone, to know that ancestors come before you and descendants have their eye on you, and to know we are called to this moment. May you be held in love, and may the work lead us toward liberation and justice. Amen.